just seen the opening to Ocean in a Drop, a film that delves into the impact the internet is having on rural and tribal communities in India and the entrepreneurs, community leaders, young people and children that are making it happen. India's internet avant-garde.
हाँ, मेरे को नेटवर्किंग इंजीनियर बनना है, मेरे को आगे बढ़ना है बहुत. जो टीचर बन गई, मेरे को इससे आगे भी बढ़ना है और मेरे को नेटवर्किंग में आना है.
Ocean in a Drop is an Australian and Indian co-production, a film and web series in collaboration with the New Delhi-based Digital Empowerment Foundation.
If you watch this film, what it actually shows you is that how in the remotest part of the country, men, women, destitute, other people are using broadband, digital technologies for changing their life and without really changing their culture and their tradition.
Ocean in a Drop peers through the lens of the Foundation's vast fieldwork, reaching the poorest communities with broadband technologies that are yielding surprising and entirely unexpected outcomes. It's an optimistic series, a window into the lives of ordinary people, many of them in villages where the web, Google and Facebook have arrived well before television.
I don't know some of them will make it to the final film or not, but there was this one story about these couple of women who used to jump over their boundary wall and come to the center because the men in the house didn't want them to go out of the house. So they would do that after their husbands would sleep or get busy, so they'll jump over the wall and come to the center.
I spent the first half of 2015 in India with 2 local camera units and a photojournalist doubling as a videographer, led by Australian Director of Photography, Jerry Nemo.
So I forget what we were shooting. I think we were shooting an interview and suddenly a wedding overtook our interview site. There was probably 500 people or something suddenly all around us. And we started shooting the 500 people. And I think one stage I had 3 people around me just holding the crowd off while I was trying to shoot because they were so interested in shooting that they were actually just surrounding me just with their elbows out. And I was just standing with the camera just trying to shoot while a wall of people, animals, cows and everything else sort of pushed past. And that was day 1 too. I remember the day 1, that was the first shoot.
We filmed in 14 villages across Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Bihar with Canadian designer and poet Kathy Chen documenting what took place on the road and behind the scenes.
I guess it's a way of understanding India in a very different way. You see how, in a way, people own very less materialistically, but in a way they are very, very rich in other ways, and the value of sharing nature, human rights, they all give you another spin on perspectives.
Time and again we met people who we were told were illiterate because they couldn't read nor write, and yet I found them to have such strong oral traditions that, unlike many of us, they've not forgotten how to remember. Traditions which I believe continue to shape their culture and to some degree their interpretation of what the internet is and how it can be of use to them.
We were introduced to our own country, our own country where we have been staying always, we are Indians, but these are some of the stories that we don't hear. But only when you travel, you get an opportunity to travel to these small places where probably you will never travel, that you come across these beautiful gems of the stories that completely change your life. So I would say, Oceans in a Drop, the making of the film, we were traveling for almost 2 months, and those 2 months are watershed moments, is a watershed moment for me in my life. I have evolved during my travels for this film, and that is truly, that I cherish that immensely.
Translation was probably the toughest part for me because that was something. When I sat and I did that, that is when I realized there's so many dialects in our country. It reflects the diversity of our country.
Udita, Ravi and Mabeen, our intrepid photojournalist, worked for around a year to translate and subtitle into English 60 of the 100 or so interviews we came away with. People such as Reena and Basanti, who weren't married off as child brides because they had learnt to use computers and navigate the internet.
जैसे कि है ना, अभी मैंने
गांव में जाके औरतों को भी इसके बारे में बताया कि गूगल क्या होता है, उसमें अपन जो भी जानकारी लेना चाहेंगे तो गूगल पे सर्च करके कर सकते हैं। गांव में जाके ये मैंने 500 महिला तैयार की थी, ज़्यादा है।
And we came across a family of poets, storytellers and musicians who have found refuge for their dying culture on the internet.
आगे एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट में टराया, अब स्कूलों को जाए बच्चे पढ़ाए मास्टर, और मास्टरों को चेक करता वो है इंस्पेक्टर।
Over the past few months, I've edited all of our footage down to 3 hours worth of stories. I need to cut each of these stories down to an hour summary and wrap the entire project into a viewable series, which also means titling and motion graphics, color correcting our footage because we just had to use 5 entirely different cameras, and finally an expansive sound mix that will immerse audiences in the nourishing audible diversity of each of the villages and ancient townships we visited. Ocean in a Drop is the most challenging film I will have made. Every one of my films tries in some way to encourage us to see ourselves in each and every one of us. Ocean in a Drop showed me how extraordinary we can be when we open ourselves to the insights and skills people have cultivated over thousands of years, not merely a few hundred.
Andrew has done a tremendously great job, even coming from Australia, going deep into the minds and the roots of the people of India to figure out how a new tool like digital technology, new highway called information highway, new means of communication like broadband has impacted people. You must watch this movie to know how India is changing in the roots of its existence.